Hey, what's going on, y'all? Yeah, so let's go ahead and get right up into today's topic. Remember, transforming your physical health live. This live broadcast I do is something where you can kind of come in and ask health and fitness questions, and I'll answer them here on the spot, at least as best as I can. Based on my years of personal training experience, and and even my own personal experience too. Now, so in the meantime, I riff on a topic that I'm interested in, and the topic for today is based on a podcast that my wife shared with me. I haven't listened to a lot of it, but it's over something that I've heard about. It's about light exposure. Um, and the part that I listened to is talking about light exposure at night. And I'm not going to get into all the details. I'm going to share a link to the podcast on YouTube where it starts talking about this stuff here so you can listen to it. But the guy being interviewed was talking about a higher mortality rate among people who were exposed to a lot of light at night. And so basically he was saying there's a study, like I said, that he was referring to where he was saying that light, um, it was studying how beneficial light is at different times of the 24-hour cycle of a day. And according to this study, I don't know all the ins and outs and all that stuff, but according to this study, light was beneficial. It showed that it was beneficial throughout the day until you got to somewhere around like 9 o'clock at night, where it shifted and light became detrimental to the human body, and it began to be associated with mortality, a higher risk of overall death. And then it switched again at about 6 or 7 in the morning. Um, and so this is huge. The reason why it's huge, and again, I've heard about this stuff, and me and my wife have really attempted to like um try not to have a whole lot of light, at night for us and for the kids. We noticed that, for example, whenever the kids have really bright lights, and they're definitely a whole lot more active and all this kind of stuff. Whereas, like, there's been times in the past where in my neighborhood, sometimes whenever it's like a storm that knocks some power lines out, and we've had our power out for a bit, we had to like put candles out at night. Then we noticed that all of us got tired really quickly, went to sleep a lot easier, stuff like that. Um, but anyhow, this is huge because um these are the kind of things that you don't learn about. These are the kind of things, really, to be honest, that I feel are kind of intuitive about health and the way the body works, the way the body's supposed to work. But the way that we have learned to operate in this world with all of our gadgets and conveniences and our modern day practices, our inventions, we don't really pay attention to these kinds of things. So, I was telling somebody this here recently about how we're living beings, just like the deer outside and the possums and all of those animals. So we just like they respond differently at different times of the day. Some animals go to sleep at night, at dark. Like, for example, we have chickens in the backyard. The moment it hits dusk, like, you don't even have to tell them to go back to their coop. They go in there and they roost, and they get on to sleep very fast. Nobody has to tell them. Like I say, certain animals are nocturnal, so they really come alive at night. We, on the other hand, now we naturally get sleepy at dark and then are supposed to go to sleep. But us being these highly intelligent beings that we are, we're able to create things that allow us to extend the day by like having lights on at night. And we just kind of like think it's cool because we're able to do that. However, it's obviously like health implications to that I think we're not really used to thinking about, but now science is starting to show that. But again, it doesn't surprise me at all. It doesn't surprise me at all that light is detrimental after a certain time. Okay. But again, it's like it's not only like the creation of the light bulb, but then also, TV and computers, especially in the form of like mobile devices in today's world. have us like having all of this light constantly going in. Here's the deal. Um, light. I don't know. Of course, I don't know how much you may know about light, but light apparently, it's like when we get a lot of light during the day, that actually helps us to set like our internal clocks, like our circadian clock, which will help you to get tired at night the way you're supposed to. When we have light all the time, it kind of disrupts that. So we don't necessarily get tired when we're supposed to. And it's not, but that's not the only consequence. And I think we should think, of course, it's not the only consequence because our bodies are very complex machines, if you will. So it's not the only consequence to have like your sleep be messed up. That melatonin and whatnot gets affected, and then all other stuff kind of starts to get thrown off too inside of our bodies. And so it only makes sense that if we're not going according to like light and dark the way that we're designed, that it'll have implications. If it messes up the hormone melatonin, why wouldn't it also affect other hormones? And on that note, in this podcast I was listening to, the dude who's being interviewed was talking about a link between light and hormonal cancers. And so like that's like cancers like breast cancer, prostate cancer, um, I'm guessing, like ovarian stuff like that. That's, very closely associated with hormones. And again, this is huge stuff. To me, it is because, and maybe you're like me. Maybe you always associated getting ill and whatnot to like just chance, bad luck of the draw. But like the more I learn, the more I'm convinced that, everything happens for a reason and that it's not luck. It's not bad luck. It's not bad cards that you were dealt or whatever. It's there are external circumstances that we're not used to really taking into consideration. It's things a lot of times I think it's not so much of just having bad luck. It's just that we haven't really found out why. And so we've we've learned to kind of have all these different kind of modern day conveniences without really knowing and understanding like the downstream implications, if you will. So like that makes sense to me. That makes perfect sense to me. It's like, for example, so my background is engineering. And I did a lot of coding when I was practicing in engineering. And one thing that I had to do is I had to like my job as an engineer was really a troubleshooter. So I had to maintain code. I had to go in and somebody have an issue. Hey, this program isn't working right. Every time I do this, it says this, but this it doesn't appear that this is right. So I have to go in and confirm that that was a real problem and confirm it wasn't just like a human user like a user error. And then you have to go in and make the appropriate changes, see what kind of changes you need to make so the code will work right. Now you do certain things to the code, then you do something here and it can mess up something downstream. Okay, and so sometimes you have to go even further back from where you think the issue is in the code to go fix something else because that thing higher up in the code caused an issue further downstream. And so the way that we have the way that we have done as like a race, a human race, we've kind of implemented a lot of things into our lives, and we haven't had any idea of the downstream negative effects of those things. And so I think that's the way it is with a lot of health problems that we tend to have. Like even for example, like Crisco and like the plant oils and all those kind of things where, you know, the hydrogenated oil is considered just a modern day marvel. Wow. You don't have to, people were saying lard and tallow or beef fat, unhealthy, let's use these plant oils and whatnot. And you can hydrogenate them so that they are just like shortening. I mean not just like shortening, but they're just like animal fat. Um and they're healthier and whatnot. But then Now, because that was, I think it was back in the early 1900s whenever Crisco came out. Then somewhere down the road, you know, America started seeing like this steady uptick in heart disease, among other things. And now in today's world, in 21st century, we see that, oh, a lot of that stuff was associated with the hydrogenated oils. That's why we had 10, 15 years ago this big kind of like news break about trans fats being so bad and whatnot. Again, it's because it turned out that some convenience based kind of change that we made in society was actually problematic, and it went against the way that our bodies actually work. And then we finally found it out years later. Unfortunately, that meant a lot of people suffered, and that sucks. That's really messed up if you think about it. But anyway, so I'm just saying that to say I'm gonna put a link to this podcast that I'm referring to in the description, so you can take a listen yourself. Um, but yeah, I'll say one thing that we do, and we need to do better. Um, but we strive to limit our light at night. I try not to use my computer too much at night. I'm not perfect with that. I don't watch a whole lot of TV or whatever, so that's never the issue. Usually, my issue would be working on something late at night. Um, but I also have some light blocking glasses, which I talked about recently, and we may get some for the rest of the family here too. But these are things that I do. That, and then there's also the eating late. I think the same podcast talks about eating late. I always say try not to eat after 8 o'clock. Usually for me, it ends up on average it's about 8:30 for me. And then sometimes, if my wife and I, on the weekend, we might eat like a little dessert, and sometimes we eat that kind of late because the weekend might be the time when we actually go and watch a movie and kind of chill and just kind of like the kids are kind of asleep, and then we can just kind of like watch a movie that we want to watch and have a treat because we don't really eat any treats like that during the week. Um, but I'm wondering if we need to kind of change that too, just to be more consistent in not eating after a certain time of night. But we're designed whenever the outside light goes down, the sun, we're designed to kind of go ahead and go to sleep with that too. We are, and I think it's hard for us to accept that because again, we're intelligent beings. But I mean, the thing is, if we're going to be really smart and take care of these bodies, then we have to pay attention to that. We got to go along. We still subject to the same natural laws and rules that God put in place. So it is what it is, as they say. All right, so hopefully that's helpful. If you have any comments, make sure you leave them below because I want to hear what you have to say about light, how you do at night, and with bright lights and stuff like that. And if you have any other questions, that's pretty much it, y'all. Y'all take care and have a good one.